In the US, Tesla dominates the conversation around electric vehicles, as consumers instinctively associate the brand and Elon Musk's eccentric, visionary persona with the push to go electric. But in Europe, it's a different story.
Hey, I'm Steven and this is Solving the Money Problem. If you're new, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. So in today's video, we're exploring why Volkswagen is doomed. My prediction is that Volkswagen will be bankrupt within 10 years. The alternative scenarios, in the best case, if they actually survive over the next decade, at most they'll be producing maybe 10, 15, or absolute best case scenario, 20% of their current vehicle volumes. And this is the absolute best case if they survive bankruptcy. Now, I'll be honest here. Volkswagen are unquestionably the best positioned of all of the world's legacy automotive manufacturers to actually survive the transition to electric vehicles. And even so, I still doubt they'll be able to survive the next 10 years. In this video, I'm going to be reacting to a recent CNBC mini documentary about Volkswagen beating Tesla in Europe. I'll share my thoughts and opinions along the way and add some additional context as to why I think this company is ultimately doomed. Now, just for the record, I really do wish Volkswagen all the best. I hope that VW can survive the transition to EVs. In fact, I hope all of the legacy automotive manufacturers can survive the transition, even those with completely brain-dead leadership who've made moronic decisions over the last 10 years. But I just don't think that's likely. So let's get into the video. If you love crypto, stocks, and free stuff, or just want to help out the channel, check out these great offers. BlockFi are launching the world's first Bitcoin rewards credit card. People in the US can earn 1.5% Bitcoin back on every purchase with no annual fee using the BlockFi Bitcoin rewards credit card. Check out the link in the description. And for a limited time, you can get up to $250 in crypto bonuses when funding a new account on BlockFi, where you can use cryptocurrency to earn interest, borrow cash, and buy or sell crypto. If you want your free crypto, use the link in the description. And if you'd like up to 2 free stocks, check out the link in the description to WeBull. If you open a new account, you'll get 1 free stock valued up to $300 just for opening an account. And if you make an initial deposit of $5 or more, you'll get a second free stock valued up to $2,000. Seriously. Free stocks? Yes, please. And finally, if you're in Australia, the UK, or New Zealand, you can get a free stock with stake, also linked in the description. Thanks so much for your support, guys. Let's get back to it.
In the US, Tesla dominates the conversation around electric vehicles, as consumers instinctively associate the brand and Elon Musk's eccentric, visionary persona with the push to go electric. But in Europe, it's a different story. While Tesla's Model 3 has been selling quite well in the region, it's not nearly enough to knock the Germany-based Volkswagen Group out of its top spot in the European EV market.
So let's just take a real quick moment here to think, even if it hurts a little. How many factories does Tesla currently have producing electric vehicles in Europe? The answer would be 0, although they are currently working on that. The Berlin factory due to begin production by the end of this year. So, the fact that Volkswagen today has a lead in terms of total number of electric vehicles sold in Europe isn't a very useful data point. This is a temporary anomaly. This is literally why Tesla is building a new factory in Europe as I record this. We'll talk about this more throughout the video, but I just want you guys and girls to keep this in mind as we continue to watch this documentary.
Where it garnered about 26% market share in the first half of 2021.
Volkswagen's ambitions for electric vehicles are global, and they're ambitious. They really want to go all in on EVs, and they are, like everyone else, gunning for Tesla.
The Volkswagen Group, which includes many different brands such as Audi, Bentley, and Porsche, has an edge in Europe thanks to its local manufacturing, brand familiarity, and cheaper price points. Not to mention Europe's tightening vehicle emission standards and steep non-compliance fines, which pushed VW to go electric as the company sought to rehab its image in the wake of the 2015 diesel emissions scandal.
VW has no choice but to fully aggressively pursue this strategy in Europe. Tesla's Berlin Gigafactory hasn't gotten up and running yet, so it's really a timing issue. VW just started selling cars more aggressively in Europe than China and the US.
This is spot on. And why did VW focus so much on Europe? Because they wanted to avoid colossal fines. This wasn't exactly a strategic business decision as much as, oh shit, how do we avoid paying billions upon billions of dollars in fines? We better make some shitty electric vehicles to sell in Europe. And then of course there was the Dieselgate scandal, VW also doing their best to rehab their tarnished image. In other words, VW began and continued to produce electric vehicles primarily because they had to. Their hand has been forced. They're doing this from a position of weakness rather than strength. So here's a thought. How often do you think that companies, or people if that's a more relatable example to you, come out on top when they're acting from a position of weakness?
Whether it can replicate the success in other markets remains to be seen, as Volkswagen still has many models under development.
They've got a lot of vehicles coming, and it takes time to get people to understand that it's there and aware of it and want to consider it. It's not necessarily that someone will not consider an electric vehicle that's not from Tesla. It's in some cases, they don't even know it's there.
A couple of things to discuss here. A lot of people seem to be under the mistaken impression that a company that's planning and eventually will release lots of electric vehicles will mean that there's more vehicles for consumers to choose from, and therefore they'll sell more vehicles, they'll capture more of the market. Tesla's 420 IQ strategy is to wait for it, take some notes here, make one category killer, and then proceed to, wait for it, kill everything else in that category. From the business point of view, the fewer models you have, the more parts in common, the cheaper your cost to manufacture, the more economies of scale come into play, the more efficient and streamline your business, the less complexity, the less problems will arise. Overall, you'll have a much more streamlined, efficient, and profitable business producing fewer products. This is obvious. A high model count is a contrary indicator. Whether we're talking about a legacy automotive manufacturer or a new EV startup, the more models they're claiming that they're going to have, the more variety they're attempting to offer consumers, the more likely they are to go out of business. What you really want to see is a company who are laser focused on making as few vehicles as possible and selling as many of each model as they possibly can. In other words, laser focused on just one category killer per category. One killer SUV, one killer compact SUV, one killer compact car, one killer pickup truck, one killer van. This is what you want to see from a company that isn't going out of business. And as we know, Tesla expects their Model Y to become the best-selling vehicle on Earth by total revenue next year in 2022. And the following year, the best-selling vehicle in terms of quantity of units sold in 2023. And just you wait until Tesla drops their $25,000 vehicle. In short, more models equals less chance of surviving the decade. Now, I'm sure some people are ready to argue that consumers need variety. Not everybody wants the exact same product. Some people want to stand out and be different, and I totally understand that. But generally speaking, those people who are trying to show how different and unique they are by consciously choosing something that isn't the best option in terms of price, performance, features, functionality, etc., are a relatively small minority of the marketplace. I certainly understand that in some areas of life, variety can be extremely important, especially to some individuals. However, when it comes to products, most of the time, most consumers are going to pick the best value, features, functionality, the best price performance in terms of a vehicle. So, while having lots of models may be the dream of every guy, when it comes to automotive manufacturers, lots of models is a nightmare and a recipe for bankruptcy.
In 2015, Volkswagen was caught cheating on American air pollution tests, programming their diesel vehicles to activate emissions controls only when emissions testing was in progress. But when the cars were operating regularly, they emitted 10 to 40 times the legal amount.
Dieselgate kind of really propelled them to try to find a different way to power their vehicles. They really had to change their image.
After the scandal, the Volkswagen Group replaced their CEO multiple times. But when Herbert Diess took the reins in 2018, he steered the company towards electrification.
It's kind of turned into a blessing in disguise because now the company has aggressively pushed a full electric strategy.
Diess has committed to spending about $68 billion by 2024 on electric cars and digital technologies. By 2029, Volkswagen says that it will build 26 million EVs and will offer 50 different fully electric models by 2030.
50 different models by 2030. I mean, is this not a recipe for a disease? Or automotive manufacturers. The point is, too many models, they're fucked. This is a really bad idea. How about 12 models? 12 category killing models. That's it. Just focus all your energy and efforts on those. Benefit from economies of scale. You can do things in terms of the manufacturing process that wouldn't make sense on lower volume vehicles, gigantic castings, these kind of things. But instead, Volkswagen doing their best to bankrupt themselves.
Adding everything up, very emotional vehicles, high economies of scale. I think we will be the most profitable company in electric vehicles.
Just for the record, that was 3 years ago. This was before Tesla was printing gigantic quarterly profits. So at the time, Herbert Diess probably believed what he was saying. But I guarantee you, if you asked him today the same question, Diess would most certainly say we are aiming to become almost as profitable as Tesla over the long term.
Here at the Transparent factory in Dresden, Germany, Volkswagen produces a limited volume of the ID.3, its top-selling EV in Europe. This compact car is mass-produced at VW's Zwickau plant, which is now solely focused on EVs, having made its last combustion engine vehicle in June 2020.
From my point of view, electric mobility has won the race. And considering the high volumes we are targeting for, I think the customer will also benefit from the economies of scale, decreasing prices.
In September 2020, VW also unveiled the ID.4, an SUV aimed at the global market that has become Volkswagen's top-selling EV globally. While the ID.3 is not sold in the US, the ID.4 is. It will be produced at Volkswagen's Tennessee plant beginning in 2022, and production is already underway in Europe and China. But as Volkswagen ramps up production of all of its EV brands, it's got a ways to go before it catches up with Tesla globally. In the first 3 quarters of 2021, Tesla sold over 627,000 EVs, while Volkswagen sold about 293,000.
So it's worth taking a quick moment here to contemplate a few questions. Which company is currently increasing their production faster? Tesla or Volkswagen? Which company is moving faster in general? Volkswagen or Tesla? Which company is innovating and driving their costs down, becoming more and more profitable on the EVs they're manufacturing? Volkswagen or Tesla? Which company currently sells every vehicle they make and hasn't spent a cent on advertising ever? Oh, and by the way, has wait times of 12 plus months on many of their models. A lot of people seem to get confused. Oh, Volkswagen produces around 10 million vehicles every year. They're already at scale. They can just turn some of those into electric vehicles and suddenly they're making more than Tesla, but that's not how it works. You need new factories, new tools, new equipment, new engineers, new everything. The number of internal combustion engine vehicles a company like Volkswagen or any other manufacturer produces is completely irrelevant. The only thing that matters, how many electric vehicles are they producing and how quickly are they ramping production up of those electric vehicles. As the data shows, Tesla is light years ahead of Volkswagen in terms of EV production, despite the fact that VW is producing many more vehicles than Tesla currently are today. Those ICE vehicles that make up like 90% of VW's total output today, that 90% is going to evaporate in the next 5 or so years. Nobody's going to want to buy these ICE vehicles. VW's going to stop making them. They're not going to be able to increase their EV production as fast as they lose their ICE sales. You can count on this. And what does this mean for VW? Well, per the theme of this video, they're likely to go bankrupt.
Volkswagen knows that it can't necessarily become another Tesla. No one can necessarily become another Tesla, even some of the EV startups. Tesla had the EV market essentially to itself for a decade, which is why their market share is so high, which is why they have the following that they do.
But as automakers like Volkswagen fully commit to electrification, analysts say that Tesla's dominance is sure to wane.
In a growth market like EVs, it's nearly impossible for a company like Tesla to maintain its majority market share.
And nowhere is that more clear right now than in the European market. In 2020, strict vehicle emission standards went into effect in Europe. This resulted in traditional automakers bringing a suite of new fully electric and hybrid vehicles to market, and Volkswagen surged past Tesla to become the region's EV leader.
The regulations in Europe also require huge fines if you miss your compliance, and that's a particularly effective motivator for some of this change.
That's right. Practically every European automotive manufacturer didn't begin producing electric vehicles because they realized if they didn't, they'd go bankrupt. It was the future. They needed to pursue this technology. Tesla was a huge threat. No, instead, they began producing compliance cars, hybrids and electric vehicles specifically to avoid gigantic fines. As I said earlier in this video, acting from a place of weakness is never a great strategy for winning.
So far this year, about 72% of the Volkswagen Group's EV sales have been in Europe. Currently, it has 25 different all-electric models on the market.
This is absolutely obscene. We've got to do some math here. In the first 3 quarters of 2021, Tesla sold more than double the number of electric vehicles that Volkswagen did globally, but let's just round that down and say Tesla sold twice as many for some easy math. Let's play a fun little counting game. Don't worry, we'll only need one hand. Let's count how many models of vehicle Tesla currently has on the market today. 1. Model S. 2. Model X. 3. Model 3. And 4. Model Y. Tesla has 4 models. Volkswagen, 25. And Tesla sold more than double the number of electric vehicles as Volkswagen in the first 3 quarters of the year. This is simply not a scalable or sustainable model for Volkswagen. There is far too much complexity here and they don't benefit as much from economies of scale. This is a great way to run yourself out of business.
And historically, some of its most popular EVs, like the e-Golf and e-Up, have been tailored for Europe, with shorter ranges but cheaper price points than Tesla's.
In Europe, you have shorter commutes. You don't need as big of a battery range. So therefore, you don't need these large cars. You can get much smaller EVs.
The introduction of the ID series, though, has given Tesla a run for its money in the region. The base model of the ID.3, for example, gets about 265 miles per charge, nearly identical to the standard Model 3, and it still costs at least $5,600 less, depending on the country. That price differential is largely due to the fact that Tesla is not yet producing vehicles in Europe, and therefore has to pay transport fees and import taxes on its cars. That should change soon, though, as Musk aims to start production at Tesla's Berlin Gigafactory by year's end, and ramp up the volume throughout next year.
This is an extremely important point. When Tesla begins local production of the Model Y in Europe, with the first stage of the Berlin Gigafactory producing around 500,000 vehicles per year and the final build out over 2 million vehicles per year, what do you think happens to the so-called competition, the locally made European electric vehicles from the likes of Volkswagen? When Tesla's Model Y is available locally in Europe for about the same price point as the steaming piles of shit, comparatively speaking, what do you think happens to the sales of these steaming piles of shit? When Model Ys start driving around, you hear from your friends and neighbors, the range is amazing, they've got over-the-air updates, the software's crazy, they're super safe, it's very efficient, blah, 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 blah. It's game over. And from the business point of view, as far as I can tell, nobody is actually making any money selling electric vehicles anywhere on Earth apart from some local companies in China and Tesla, meaning that even if Volkswagen is selling vehicles that suck by comparison to the Model Y for about the same price point, and sure, some consumers are buying them, they're not going to be making any money on these vehicles. Meanwhile, Tesla is going to be making ridiculous 30+% gross margins. Volkswagen are seriously screwed. Forget the ICE business, that's a burden, that's actually making it even more likely they'll be going bankrupt. They're producing less than half the number of EVs Tesla is today. They're not making any money on them, and they're not increasing their production even close to as quickly as Tesla is. With Tesla's Berlin Gigafactory beginning production this month, Tesla is about to devour Volkswagen from the inside out in their homeland.
But just like Tesla in the US, VW has an important head start in the region, along with deep brand familiarity.
They have a history there. Much like the Detroit automakers do in the Midwest, Volkswagen has for all of Germany, if not close to all of Europe.
Out of all of Volkswagen's vehicle sales in Europe this year, 7.9% have been all-electric vehicles. That's nearly double last year's percentage. But by 2030, Volkswagen says that 70% of its vehicle sales in Europe will be EVs.
This is another sure sign that Volkswagen are going bankrupt before the decade ends. In 2030, they're intending to have just 70% of the vehicles they produce in Europe be electric. Let me ask the obvious question. Who the fuck is going to be buying the other 30% of the vehicles they're producing? Serious question. We're just a couple of years away from the purchase price of an electric vehicle being cheaper for comparable performance, range, features, functionality, etc. than an equivalent internal combustion engine vehicle. And the total cost of ownership of an electric vehicle is significantly less than that of an ICE vehicle already today. It's much cheaper to recharge versus refuel, and there's almost no maintenance, repairs and servicing because there's very few moving parts in an electric vehicle. The point is, for 95% of consumers, buying anything other than an electric vehicle by about 2023, 24 at the latest, and maybe 25 in an absolutely extreme scenario in some parts of the world, is going to be what I would consider to be a brain-dead decision. And let me be clear, the bell curve is real, so some ICE vehicles will still be sold in 23, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. But the point that I'm making here, the only consumers choosing to purchase ICE vehicles after mid this decade will be morons. And by the end of this decade, 2030, when Volkswagen is still expecting 30% of their vehicle sales will be internal combustion engine, even morons won't be dumb enough to be buying ICE vehicles anymore. And what does that say about the fuckwits at Volkswagen?
This is a VW shift that is intended to be deep and thorough, and it's going to take some time to get there. What happens in the next 3 years in terms of who's selling more than somebody else is important, but really it's going to be 10 years before we have really good sense of what's happening.
Now, call me arrogant, it certainly wouldn't be the first time, it's definitely true, but we already know what's happening. I can see it playing out over the next decade. That's why I continue to make videos. I have been for the last 2 years, and I'm telling you guys to keep me accountable, set reminders and check back, because I can already tell you what's going to happen. Are you ready? Per my Tesla valuation model, which I've posted exclusively on Patreon for supporters at the investor tier or above, check out the card in the corner or the link in the description to join Patreon, gain access to that, plus a bunch of exclusive content, including over 100 Q&As, a dozen or so exclusive videos, and a bunch of other perks as well. By the end of this decade, Tesla will be producing on the order of 20 million electric vehicles per year. The vast majority of legacy automotive manufacturers will be out of business. They will have gone bankrupt. Some of them may, along the way, merge or be acquired by other companies. eventually go bankrupt, and there might be a few phoenix rising moments where some of these companies go bankrupt, and then from the ashes of that bankruptcy forms a new company focused solely on electric vehicles. Maybe there'll be a version 2 or 3 in the case of General Motors operating in 2030, but they'll have gone bankrupt in the meantime. Most of the successful pure electric vehicle companies will have come from China. There may be a few startups from other parts of the world that are successful as well. Some of the most successful of these companies may even be selling upward of 1 million electric vehicles per year. Tesla will be selling more electric vehicles per year than any other company by a significant margin. They'll also be number 1 for electric vehicle sales in the United States, and also number 1 in Europe by a huge margin. China up for grabs. In the best case scenario, despite the odds being heavily stacked against them, somehow Volkswagen has crawled to the end of the decade still in one badly injured piece. If they're really lucky, they may even be selling around 2 million electric vehicles per year and 0 ICE vehicles. But I'm giving this extremely low odds, and let me explain why. Despite the fact that I believe of all the legacy automotive manufacturers, VW is actually in the best position and the least likely to go bankrupt this decade, I still think they are unequivocally VW has about $250 billion. I just want to make sure everyone caught that. $250 billion with a T, trillion dollars of debt. To paraphrase Sandy Munro, how the flying do they pay that off? Oh, and by the way, you know how they're supposed to transition to EVs? You do realize that involves new factories, new equipment, new tools, new everything, which means more money, and that means more debt, not less debt. This is a critically important point of my thesis as to why Volkswagen are doomed and they will go bankrupt by the end of this decade. Approximately 95% of VW's business today is selling ICE vehicles. Sales of ICE vehicles are going to collapse in the next few years. As VW sells less ICE vehicles, they make less profit. They're not making any money on their EVs today. Over time, economies of scale, they will start making a profit, but not for a few years. And in the meantime, the less ICE vehicles they sell, the less money they have, which means the more debt they need to take on to transition to EVs. And then there's another piece of the puzzle. This is a bit of a flywheel. Less ICE vehicles produced means less economies of scale, means they make less money on each ICE vehicle sold. The less they sell, the less profitable. This is an absolute train wreck waiting to happen. So, while VW is simultaneously making less and less money on every vehicle produced with each passing day, week, month, and year, they simultaneously need to accelerate and increase their spending, desperately trying to transition to EVs. Let me give you guys and girls some ballpark numbers to really drive this point home. Based on VW's 2019 profit, which didn't account for the pandemic, so I don't want to use the 2020 data, it would take VW about 15 years to pay off all of their existing debt, assuming that they're making that same profit over the next 15 years every single year, but we know that won't happen. We just discussed why. At some point in the future, and admittedly it may take a few years after all, banks can be as dumb as Wall Street analysts sometimes. It's going to become evident to the bankers that VW are trying to approach to get new lines of credit, take on new debt to actually help them transition, that there's no way on earth they'll ever be able to repay this facility, and therefore no VW, you can't have any more money. This will be the final nail in the coffin for VW. And now, let's head back to La La Land, where we don't actually know what's going to happen in terms of electric vehicles, Tesla and Volkswagen over the next 10 years.
With the introduction of the ID.4 SUV, Volkswagen is aiming to broaden its market share worldwide. So far, sales are picking up in both the US and China.
In US and other markets, I think the SUV segments are even stronger. And that's why we launched our ID.4, which is basically the electric world car for us.
Americans like bigger cars largely because they're just less space constrained than Europeans. More of the country is rural, roads are wider, and parking spaces are larger, making roomy vehicles more appealing. The base version of the ID.4 costs about $40,000, more expensive than other SUVs like the Chevy Bolt or the Hyundai Kona, but definitely less pricey than the Tesla Model X or Model Y, which have both experienced substantial price hikes this year.
Now this is a very important point. It's worth discussing as there's a lot of nuance here. The price of the Model Y has increased significantly throughout the year. In fact, it's up about 20%, which is mind-blowing. However, the primary reason for these price increases isn't increased costs, isn't due to part shortages due to supply chain issues, although that is a contributing factor. The primary reason for the price increases is Tesla's absolutely absurd demand. Tesla have been forced to raise prices on their vehicles so wait times don't become any more obscene. I mean, can you imagine the customer experience where you order a vehicle that's for sale today, not pre-ordering, not reserving, but you're buying one today and you have to wait 12, 18, 24, 36 months to take delivery? It's just not reasonable. So what Tesla are doing is trying to adjust their pricing so they can have a balance between supply, demand, and reasonable wait times. And there's two things that really matter about this. On the surface level, it may not look like Tesla's competitive, say with the ID4, the ID3, etc. because, the price is way more expensive. But behind the scenes, one, Tesla is making ludicrous profits on each of these vehicles, whereas VW is making no money whatsoever. And two, the more important thing, is Tesla has incredible pricing power. If they just pull the lever and reduce prices, an incremental decrease in price creates an exponential increase in demand. This should scare the living shit out of every automotive manufacturer on earth attempting to compete with Tesla. They will never be able to do so. Over the longer term, there is no question, Tesla will be able to sell their vehicles for a lower price than anyone else is able to produce them for. This is a really important point to understand. Tesla's cost to manufacture vehicles will be cheaper than another company can sell them for, and the other company needs a margin on top of that, otherwise they go out of business. You need to make a profit selling your products, or you don't have a sustainable business model. And because of Tesla's pace of innovation, their manufacturing techniques, the fact that they continue to drive prices down, and they already have economies of scale unmatched by any other automotive manufacturer, never mind their unmatched vertical integration, nobody is ever going to catch them on this. For the entire decade, Tesla is going to have the option of undercutting any other company in terms of price point if Tesla can ramp production enough to avoid ridiculous wait times by reducing prices.
And it's far from the group's only international all-electric offering.
Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, all within the Volkswagen family, they all have their own different brands. And that's actually where Volkswagen has a very big advantage over Tesla.
I have to disagree with this point now. I totally understand where he's coming from here. Oh yeah, more brands. Oh, I'm an Audi guy. I'm going to buy an Audi. I totally get where he's coming from. But he fails to understand that if Tesla has category killers in every category that all of these additional brands that VW has are competing in, Tesla is going to wipe the floor with them.
Because they can appeal to more buyers.
So every customer can find a suitable product, either it's in the luxury segment, the sporty segment, the volume segment.
But even with these myriad offerings, there's a good chance that VW will never be the EV leader outside of its home market.
We're big believers that the future actually looks like it'll be one of more regional champions. Perhaps Tesla in the US or GM.
Did that guy seriously just suggest that General Motors may be the winner in the United States in terms of electric vehicles? Is he on Biden's payroll as well?
And I can remember your dramatic announcement that by 2035 GM would be 100% electric. You changed the whole story, Mary, wherever you are. There you are. You did, Mary. You electrified the entire automobile industry. I'm serious. You led, and it matters.
Let's go, Brandon!
Don't forget your Let's Go branded merch, card in the corner, link in the description, shirts, hoodies, mugs, stickers, phone cases, everything you can possibly imagine. This is limited edition and won't be available in the store much longer. So if you're interested, now's the time. Now, in all seriousness, I have to ask the question. Let me know in the comments below what you guys and girls think. Are there actually any people, at least people whose brains work and haven't been gaslit by the president or Mary B. Esparra, who actually think General Motors have a chance of being the #1 electric vehicle maker in the United States at the end of the decade? Like, is there anyone on earth who actually thinks this? Maybe I just live in a bubble. I'm curious what you guys think.
VW in Europe, and then in Asia, maybe a domestic player or perhaps Tesla there.
Currently, Tesla controls about 63% of the US market, with the Volkswagen Group vying for a distant second. While in China, Tesla and local automakers such as BYD and SAIC are gunning for the lead. All this could change rapidly in the coming years, though, as the EV market matures. And as Narayan sees it, Volkswagen may be well positioned to fill niches that Tesla doesn't yet reach.
Hate to rain on any parades here, but let's do some thinking right now, okay? Tesla, Model Y, compact SUV, it's going to dominate. It's going to sell a few million units per year over the long term. They've also got a sedan. They've also got a pickup truck just around the corner, the Cybertruck. What's missing from Tesla's lineup today that they'll need in the future to cover every major category of terrestrial transport? It's really simple. A van and a compact car. That's it. Tesla needs to unveil and then begin producing just 2 new models that we don't already know about, and they will have all of the bases covered. People don't seem to get this, but I'm not pulling these numbers out of my ass. If you guys are curious, do some homework. Look at all of the major vehicle categories on planet Earth in terms of how many vehicles are sold every year. look at sedans, look at SUVs, compact SUVs, pickup trucks, vans, compact cars. As I said earlier, Tesla is just going for one category killer per category, and then that's right, they kill the entire category. There are only two viable strategies for companies producing electric vehicles this decade. They are as follows. 1. Just pick up the scraps, the leftovers. Make vehicles in the tiny low volume vehicles that Tesla doesn't give a fuck about because they're too small to matter. Or alternatively, a subset of this, vehicles that are too unsafe for Tesla to ever produce. Shout out to the Wuling Mini EV. Death machine on wheels, costs a couple of $1,000s. It's so unsafe, there's so few safety features. If you fart in its general direction, you'll probably kill all of the passengers inside. Another example of these would be electric motorcycles. And the other approach instead is to just do what Tesla is doing. One category killer per category, but the problem is you need to be even better than Tesla, and good fucking luck with that. Tesla's business model in a nutshell is to make products that are so good in every major category that really matters in terms of scale that you'd literally need to be an idiot not to buy that product. That's literally Tesla's business model. It seems like the strategy of the legacy automotive manufacturers who are all going to be going bankrupt later this decade, instead of doing what Tesla is doing or attempting to fill some of the voids, are instead just trying to put a steaming pile of shit into every category Tesla's competing in, and then 12 other steaming piles of shit in the exact same category as well, in the hope that there's enough dumb consumers that buy those instead of the superior product. Maybe it'll work?
If you look at the lineup that VW has and what Tesla has, they don't really fall into each other's sandbox. You know, VW has Audi and Porsche, which come at the luxury and SUV market, something that Tesla has somewhat ignored. And then where Tesla really is, it's its Model 3 and Model Y, which really come above where VW brand's offerings are, which are priced probably 20 to 30% below.
Until 1, local manufacturing of the Model Y, and 2, the $25,000 Tesla, and then game over VW.
Volkswagen's ID.6 also began deliveries in China this summer. It seats 7 to accommodate a market where multiple generations of a single family often travel together in a single car.
If you look at what Volkswagen has coming, they've got another 10 or 11 VW branded vehicles coming, plus Skoda, plus Seat, plus Audi, plus Porsche.
By 2030, Volkswagen expects that EVs will make up 50% of its total vehicle sales in both the US and China.
I seriously can't f***ing deal with this. 2030? They're expecting half of the vehicles they sell in China and the United States to be electric? How high are these people? And can I please have some? I mean, seriously, what the f*** are the other 50%? Are they going to be powered by unicorn tears? What is going on here? I'm going to come up with a new rule of thumb. Let's call it the I'm a fucking idiot ICE manufacturer equation, okay? Whatever percentage of vehicles this company is assuming they'll be selling in 2030 that aren't electric, deduct that entire amount from their total global vehicle production, and then, as a penalty for being so fucking dumb, reduce the remaining percentage of vehicles they intend to sell in 2030, as in the electric vehicles, reduce that percentage down to 0%, and you'll know exactly how many vehicles these fucking morons will be selling in 2030 because they'll be bankrupt. I ain't messing around here, guys. Any of the legacy automotive manufacturers who today have a plan to still be selling any ICE vehicles whatsoever in 2030 will not survive the decade.
To reach these ambitious goals, analysts say that VW will need to improve upon its software and battery technologies, areas where it's still seen as lagging behind Tesla.
The one major advantage, if you talk to anyone about Tesla, is their software. The major kind of example is the over-the-air technology. Tesla was really the first to bring that out. It really showed that they are treating the vehicle more as a technology and not just something to get you from A to B.
Tesla has long pushed out vehicle updates through its app, making it simple for users to install the latest navigation, entertainment, and safety features. Volkswagen wants to do the same for its ID series, and the company says that it is investing around $19 billion in digitalization and software capabilities over the next 5 years.
Imagine spending $19 billion attempting to catch up to where Tesla is today in terms of their software capabilities. Now, just for context, throughout Tesla's entire history as a company up till 2018, 3 years ago, in their entire history as a company, Tesla had raised about $19 billion of capital total. And since that point, Tesla has raised capital, but if you actually look at their cash balances, they needn't have. That was all the capital Tesla ever needed to raise in their entire history before becoming a cash printing machine, a self-sustaining business. So VW, in essence, is intending to invest the same amount of capital that it cost to build Tesla, a $1 trillion company, just trying to catch up to Tesla's software capabilities. This is an astonishing fact. This also speaks to how incredibly inefficient and bloated VW is as an organization. On one hand, we have Tesla, one of the world's most resourceful companies, doing the most with the least. And on the other hand, you've got Volkswagen, one of the world's least resourceful companies, one of the world's least efficient companies.
Which includes autonomous vehicles and ride-sharing services.
VW has a very big ambition to be a software leader. It wants to be the second biggest software company in Europe, right after SAP. They actually believe they could be kind of a one app to rule them all.
We expect the car to be a mobile device on wheels in the very near future. We have our own company within the group that is purely focused on software development and autonomous driving.
When it comes to batteries, a teardown of the ID.3 revealed that Tesla's batteries are about $1,300 cheaper than Volkswagen's per car.
While this is obviously bullish for Tesla, I just want to point out how fucking atrocious this supposed data is. There's no context. They haven't included cost per kilowatt hour, so this is totally meaningless. For example, if Volkswagen was producing vehicles whose batteries were, 33% smaller on average because they're more compact, the smaller cars, they have lower range, etc., this would paint a far more dire picture than if the average battery pack in a Volkswagen vehicle was the same size as Tesla. Everyone knows that Tesla has a major cost advantage when it comes to batteries, except for maybe Gordon Johnson. But why present something without the context necessary for people to really understand what this means? It's just dumb.
But VW is thinking big, with plans to build 6 gigafactories throughout Europe by 2030 and 1 in China. By controlling its own battery supply chain, Volkswagen can ensure that it gets the best pricing available and can bring vehicles to market quickly, even if there's a supply chain crunch.
They don't want to face another situation like the semiconductor chip shortage, where they're literally begging and pleading and negotiating, just trying to get a few small microchips.
Lastly, Volkswagen is investing heavily in charging infrastructure.
We are targeting for in total 400 charging stations in Europe, 100 of them in Germany, and the idea is to have every 120 kilometers one charging point.
Volkswagen also has a US-based charging division, Electrify America, that formed in the wake of the Dieselgate settlement. It's committed to more than doubling its American and Canadian charging infrastructure by 2025. And the Volkswagen Group is building out its charging network in China too, in partnership with a local startup.
Currently, Tesla has the most charging points, and it is exclusive to Tesla owners. And so you really have these two ecosystems, the Tesla supercharger network and then kind of everybody else, who are largely interoperable.
Tesla has recently opened its supercharger network to non-Tesla owners for the first time, through a pilot program in the Netherlands. And so if this effort expands, it would be a huge boon to Volkswagen and every other EV maker.
But in any event, this problem of public charging will be resolved. They're being built at breakneck speed right now.
As Volkswagen plans to release an abundance of new EV models,
Instead of just a tiny selection of category killers,
works to improve its software capabilities,
by investing literally the same amount of capital that was required to build Tesla, $1 trillion company,
and builds out new battery plants and charger networks, it seems doubtless that the company will cut into Tesla's market share.
until they go bankrupt, that is.
Though whether it can become the global EV leader remains to be seen.
Any automaker in the world would love to have the cachet and the appeal of Tesla right now. They have gone beyond the car brand to a cultural kind of phenomenon.
But scale is undoubtedly on Volkswagen's side. While Tesla has historically struggled to ramp up production, mass manufacturing is something that the Volkswagen Group knows a thing or two about.
Holy f***, this is some 69 IQ shit right here. Now, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but let's think a little bit about why this is a completely moronic thing to say. We saw earlier in this video, in the first 3 quarters of this year, Volkswagen produced less than half the number of electric vehicles that Tesla did, okay? ICE vehicles aren't the same thing as electric vehicles. Forget the scale that Volkswagen is producing ICE vehicles at. Very little of that translates to producing EVs profitably at scale. Tesla has the advantage in terms of scale, not Volkswagen. The supply chain and logistics, including materials, parts, etc. for electric vehicles versus ICE vehicles, again, it's completely different. Volkswagen needs to build out their own supply chain, okay? What Tesla has already done to a more advanced level at a larger scale. So the idea that Volkswagen currently producing lots of vehicles versus Tesla gives them an advantage is just completely batshit insane.
I think it's an advantage for all of the traditional automakers that they already know how to mass produce vehicles. And not only that, if you look at the fact that they have plants to convert, it's still a costly process, but they do have a manufacturing footprint to work with already. And Tesla is still developing theirs.
But Tesla is making progress, gearing up for production on Volkswagen's home turf.
Tesla is obviously still gunning and growing its business, including a gigafactory in Berlin, which is about 2.5 hours away from Volkswagen's world headquarters. So if that wasn't a shot across the bow at Volkswagen from Tesla, nothing really is.
This is absolutely spot on. Tesla building a factory in Berlin that's ultimately going to produce millions of electric vehicles per year and put Volkswagen and many other German automakers out of business doesn't get much more savage than that. Now, there is a valuable lesson to be learned here, although unfortunately it's a little bit too late for Volkswagen, Ford, General Motors, Hyundai, Toyota, pick your legacy automotive manufacturer, and that lesson is quite simply, don't bet against Elon. Great opportunity to plug my merch design. Check out the card in the corner or the link in the description to pick up your own Don't Bet Against Elon merch, shirts, hoodies, long sleeves, phone cases, mugs, and plenty more. And I think it might be worth a follow-up design. Let me know what you guys and girls think in the comments below. Don't compete against Elon. In either case, it's not going to end well. So I hope you guys and girls have enjoyed today's video. I do want to be clear, I really hope that VW are successful. I think Herbert Diess is doing some great work there, but every time Herbert Diess goes, hey guys, we're about to hit an iceberg, we need to go all in on EVs, he just gets pushed back from the 469 trillion different stakeholders within the company, always putting his job at risk every time he says what needs to be done and tries to take action. And the craziest thing of all is that I genuinely believe that VW are the best positioned legacy automotive manufacturer, the least likely to go bankrupt this decade, and yet still, I think there's better than even odds that that's exactly what happens. There's too much bureaucracy, too much legacy, too many stakeholders, far too much complexity, too little vision, too little urgency, and I don't think they stand a chance. Let me know in the comments below, what's your guess for the year that Volkswagen goes bankrupt, if at all, and also, how many vehicles, if they don't end up going bankrupt, will Volkswagen produce in 2030? Also, this is the longest video I've ever produced for YouTube, so if you're watching and you enjoyed the video, don't forget to smash your girlfriend. Wait, did I say that right? Is that how it goes? Yeah, I think something went wrong there. Anyway, if you guys do want to support the channel and access a ton of exclusive content, including my up-to-date Tesla stock price targets, check out the card in the corner. You can sign up to Patreon. There's a ton of exclusive content, a bunch of perks as well. That includes our private Discord server, a bunch of exclusive videos made specifically for Patreon, and 100 Q&A videos and counting. See you over there. I'm Stephen Mark Ryan, this is Solving the Money Problem, and I love you all. And don't forget the BlockFi Bitcoin Rewards credit card, where you can earn 1.5% Bitcoin back on every purchase. There's a link in the description. You can also earn up to $250 in crypto bonuses when funding a new account on BlockFi, also linked below. And finally, don't forget your free stocks with WeBull and Stake, also linked in the description. These great offers also help out the channel. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, if you have any ideas for future videos, let me know. I read all your comments. P.S. If you're still watching, you're awesome. If you'd like early access, exclusive videos, regular Q&As, our private Discord server and more, consider supporting the channel at patreon.com/solvingthemoneyproblem so I can keep creating content for you guys. There's a link in the description. You can now also become a member of the channel for some exclusive perks. To learn more, click the join button next to subscribe. And don't forget to check out our merch store. Either way, the best form of support is you being here and watching, so thanks again.